And it's 6 o'clock, and Kristen is on time. And you can stand up if you'd like, because I'm going to call the meeting to order. And you're going to say the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Turn off my phone. Okay, Mary Kay, roll call.
Angie Schreiber. Kristen Mattmiller.
Here.
Andy Mary.
Here.
Jake Leiterman.
Here.
Dr. Julie Sprague.
Here.
Danny Pyatt.
Here.
And Dr. Dave Bardo.
Here. I don't believe we have any public comments, so we will move right on to new business. A, WERS greenhouse updates and renovation. It's probably best if you're going to make any presentation that you come down and sit by Jake so that this microphone picks you up.
Mike, you can come too.
Yeah, Mike, you don't have to sit back there. You can join us. Even the high school principal can come on down. It's okay. We'll get you a chair.
I can move this.
Oh, that's okay. Yep.
Gotta hit on my little thing here.
What's up?
You don't want to sit?
No, I'm good.
So I guess just to give you guys a, I guess a little explanation as to why this is on the agenda and where we want to go. Shalyn is obviously our ag teacher, deals with the greenhouse all the time. Mike's here because he's their tech head, department head, and then obviously Clint. So over the last couple of years, we've really had struggles keeping this structure operating the way it should. Our biggest thing is it's just way past its useful life. And Shalyn will explain a little more on that in the presentation, but Mike and Shalyn have been really looking to get this improved for a while. It's just always hard to find the right funding for it, but inevitably it doesn't go away. And we're at a point where I think it's time for some serious improvement and replacement of some stuff, or we're not going to be able to operate the greenhouse any longer past this school year. And Shalyn will explain a number of those things, but I guess what we're kind of asking for tonight is just let you know that it's on our radar and we want to pursue getting bids for it and things of that nature, just so that you know and you're good with us proceeding. Obviously not looking for approval till we have bids for you, but just wanted to kind of give you the background on it and where we're headed, so.
Okay, so it was all submitted on Friday, so I'm gonna kind of breeze through some of it. I'm not gonna read it word for word, if that's okay with all of you. So obviously the goal, it's to update, upgrade, and renovate my existing greenhouse, just for not only to be safe and energy efficient, but also have proper working conditions so students and staff can learn and grow in. Little bit of history just gives you when it was started. Background was Mike Olson, the ag teacher at the time, an FFA advisor, worked with the Anago FFA alumni. It was all funded by the community with donations, and it was built by volunteers through the FFA alumni, so that information is there in the history. Community impact, obviously there was impact prior 2000 to 2017, but my immediate impact was from when I started in 2017 to present. And you'll see all the different things that we are either currently doing, because some things are yearly and some things were in the process from 17 until now. And then student impact, obviously there's a huge amount of impact, but I tried to consolidate onto one slide. Currently, there's 6 classes using it throughout the year, and that kind of gives you a synopsis of what we do. And then on the right side is the enrollment. And I'm just going to clarify, if you look at the enrollment and are wondering why it looked like it dropped from 21-22 to 22-23, our 8th graders were a quarter in 21-22, so I saw roughly 30 to 60 8th graders per quarter. And now this year we are semester, so I went from seeing 30 to 60 a quarter to seeing 60 a semester. So that's why that number significantly dropped, because I'm unable to see that many students.
But the kids that were in there
Correct.
were in there for a longer period of time.
Yes, this
So
semester.
It's comparable numbers.
Is this a jump from 2019-20 to 2021? Is that a function of 8th grade or what?
One is function of 8th grade, and also the addition of how I structured classes. So prior to 2017, there was only one ag class, or excuse me, one horticulture class being taught, and that was second semester. I restructured it, and I teach in there year-round. So intro to horticulture is first and second semester. First semester for sure. Second semester, if I have the room in my schedule and numbers. Second semester is advanced horticulture, which is just advancing that class, and the students in intro are working in that class. And then I have horticulture managers, which I've moved on. That was an addition. Plus, I am utilizing 8th grade, and then I'm using ag science in there, and now I've added food science to my class. So food science is also in there as well. So since I've taken over, more classes are utilizing the greenhouse.
So food science is a new class.
That was a transfer from Family and Consumer Education. They no longer could put it in their schedule, so it was transferred over to me, and I took it over last year. So this is my second year utilizing that class in there as well. So
Is
that's,
that class actually utilized in the greenhouse?
yes, the things in the greenhouse and the things that are grown in the greenhouse, they see how they're grown. That's my working process.
Okay,
But with the current concerns, it's been limited.
all right, thank you.
So current concerns, we have panels are blowing off. This has been a concern since I started in 2017. Our weather vane system, parts of it blew off in the storm in December of 2021, which causes no accurate wind speed, which allows to not allow it for automatic opening and closing. The automatic venting, it will open and close when it needs to. Right now that is shut off because it can't automatically. And you can see my fear of leaving it open, so I don't do it manually right now. Other concerns are inconsistent heating and cooling systems. We've had a really concern of what's going on with losing plants. And as you can see, I lost half my flower crop last year because my conditions were not adequate for me to keep things warm and cool. There's no other ventilation. I'm relying just on 2 small fans in the greenhouse, and there is no cooling system in the head house. And prior to me taking over, some of the growing and done was in the classroom. I'm doing everything in the head house, which is there's no growing in the head house. It's all work in the head house. And right now there's no cooling system except if you use the doors.
To clarify, cooling is not air conditioning. Cooling in a greenhouse is proper ventilation or air movement.
Thank you.
Could you, what's the ethylene gas, where's it leaking from?
So it's part of the process of the burner within the heaters, and they're rusted out, and they're not burning completely efficient, so the off gas of that is affecting the plants.
Okay,
So that's when she says that she lost half of her flowers last year. We didn't quite know why until we had a consultant come in and he started talking and explaining, and she's like, oh, makes all the sense in the world now.
And that's part of it, plus the cooling, because when it gets super hot in there,
Yeah.
if I can't turn anything else on, I I can only water so much to keep it cool as well.
they go super hot really fast too.
Sound like you know about it.
Yes.
I was figuring you had a little more knowledge about this than I do.
Automatic venting is, really essential.
And then outdated control system, so there's limited options for heating and cooling. And right now, I can control some of it, and then some of it's through the school system that,
and by outdated, the parts are obsolete. So we're trying different ways, whether Sheila's doing things manually or whatever, we're trying to make it work over the last couple of years.
And then leaking water system, again, nothing's been replaced, so heat, cool, lots of water, so looking at needing that replaced as well. And a lot of those parts are no longer in existence, or we're trying to make things work. You can see the pictures of concerns. Is there any questions on any of those? Updates, so we're gonna split this into two. So I'm gonna talk first about the greenhouse, which is the growing part of the greenhouse. So we're gonna put new clear panels in. We're going to split the ridge vent. So the ridge vent is the top vent. That is currently all one. That's how it was designed. It's actually gonna be split from the head house, so that can be opened and closed on its own. They're gonna install a new sidewall vent, 2 exhaust fans on the opposite side to help with that circulation. Install 4 small vents for more air circulation, a new heater, installing a curtain system, and I can explain that with the picture, but that's for heat retention in the winter and then cooling in the summer. And then replacing all the watering hoses and sprinkler nozzles, and then adding back, I currently, in storage, we have 4 flood tables, and I would like to add them back into the greenhouse once it is renovated. And that will help with more options to grow things.
What is a flood table?
So basically, like a hydroponic system, but it's on a table. So the water, you just put in plugs, so it can be peat moss plants or something, and they just float in water. And prior to me coming, when Mike Olson had it, he was using them, and they were growing lettuce for food service. And then over time, hands changed hands, and then they were storage tables when I arrived, and I didn't quite understand them. So they have gone into storage for space, but I would like to return them back to the greenhouse to utilize that.
And at one time, were you growing potato tubers in these, or was this before your time?
That was before my time, but I can seek out information for that. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think what you're referencing is UW actually grew some in there for a short period of time right after we built it. Tim was kind of telling me about that. I don't know all the details, but, yeah.
This is, they would have been growing technotubers, so you essentially are growing them in a rain gutter. The roots are in a rain gutter, and then there's a top on it, and every so often you can pick it up and pluck all the tubers off and then stick it back in and grow more tubers. And this is all, it's UW, so it's the seed farm in Rhineland are really doing it, and we're just trying to grow virus-free stock. They would grow them here, and then they would go to the farm in Rhinelander, and then the next crop would go to farmers.
So here are some pictures of what that would look like. So if you, the middle one, the middle kind of tall rectangle vertical picture is what a vent looks like when it's partially open on the sidewall. And then the top left picture shows you the clear panels. And I'm actually going to talk about the left on the white in a minute, but that kind of shows you like the distinction between the two. And it also shows you the exhaust fans. And then the bottom right is that curtain system that we are talking about. So that would come across when so now if I had it and I had young plants in there, that would help with heat retention, starting seedlings, and then in the spring, summer, especially May, when we never know what the weather is going to be like, that would help with the cooling system. And especially because we live in Antigo and we never know when windstorms are going to happen up, that would be another level. If other things couldn't open, that would be another level of a cooling system to help in the greenhouse if vents couldn't open and things like that. Anything you do want to add, anytime? Okay. They're my technical. And then head house, new white panels. This is going to distinguish the head house from the greenhouse. Right now, it's very difficult to even explain to students the head house versus the greenhouse. And it's also gonna help with cooling in there because it won't be so bright, it won't be clear. Installing a vent on one side wall to help with that air circulation. So again, air circulation, an exhaust fan on the opposite side, new control panels and a weather vane will be installed, and then a new heater, and then installing an overhead door. And if you'll take a look at the pictures, the overhead door would replace an existing double door right now, which would help with bringing in soil and other products that we need. And then another picture is just what the exhaust fan looks like in the inside. And then the third picture to the right is the clear panel, so you can see that you don't see out, not clear, excuse me, the white panels that you can't see out. And then that's a picture of a new weather, or a new control panel system.
Who is, when you talk about all this stuff you want to add, who's driving what needs to be added?
So we have a couple of people, whether they're consultants or people in the industry, that have come and talked with us. We've toured a few other greenhouses, one that's almost identical to ours. And they're guiding us on that. We do have to get competitive bids, so I'd rather not say exactly who's all involved with that.
Because these might be
Publicly.
people who would bid.
Correct.
So I started with.
One is a completely independent person, that's been the majority of it, but.
So I started with ag teachers because I consult with them regularly. And so I started talking to teachers like, I have some really good friends that worked with some different people, and I'd be like, what works for you, what doesn't work for you? And as I started into this process, and then we were recommended to go to this one school that is very close to the one we have, it was like walking in to my greenhouse, and so starting to see the things that worked, the things that didn't work. And then I talked to other ag teachers that I'm very close with, and they recommended, exhaust fans versus something else because they currently have something and it doesn't work for them. So I just took a lot of advice from fellow ag teachers that also have greenhouses and really worked, and then built off of that. And then worked with the four of us to come up with a plan that worked best for what we currently have.
Okay.
So the last slide is the elephant in the room.
We did have a meeting though, because obviously the greenhouse and its condition has been on Shalin's radar for a long time, Clint's, Jake's, Mike, and I felt kind of like I was the newbie coming into it because it's one of multi-pages of what we need to do for facilities improvements, right, and upkeep. But when you consider that it really is a classroom space, and to not have it be safely renovated and usable, we'd be missing out on access for all those classes. The meeting we had involved Katie Ostrenga, obviously our business manager, and you see the memo there from her. But what we did was we are considering a compromise for the funding because this was not budgeted for. As you understand, the money's not in Jake's budget. But Mike did apply for and receive the DWD Fast Forward grant. And so by looking at 2-year, right?
Yep.
1 year, a 2-year grant, and with his agreement, closing that out after 1 year because it was a 200% match on the district's part. So that's how we would fund it, and Mike agreed to forego, but I'm gonna have you speak to what you would be foregoing because I'm not articulate in that area.
Yeah, so basically, we have that grant that I wrote. We've got our machine that we ordered on that, and now we're working on our match. So I have my local business partners that are working on their in-kind matches and all of those things. But we still have to come up with X amount of dollars, and I don't know exactly where that's gonna be because it depends on how much money everybody gives us on the in-kind match. So talking with Katie, she said that she had right around $90,000 available currently. If we agree not to get the 2 machines that I have put forward in the grant, which would be the 2 milling machines that we have, just under $50,000 is what those would cost, we would be able to secure the greenhouse project if we would be able to alter our grant. So she did reach out to the Wisconsin DWD and talk to them, and they are fine with us altering the grant as long as we fill out the paperwork and do what we need to. So that'll 100% guarantee we could get this project done out of that funding. Side note, it doesn't mean I'm gonna lose out on my equipment. I moved that equipment forward in our 5-year department plan because that was an easy fruit to get the match, because it was nice round numbers, 50 grand, and here it is. I have other things that we are working on and doing, so we'll still be working towards those machines. We just won't get them right now. North Central Technical College here in Antigo has 4 of those machines sitting at their facility right now that they are not using. They haven't used since I worked there in 2015, really. I offer their dual credit class here, so I'm in talk with them to see if I can get them to bring those machines to us to allow our students to use those machines without us actually purchasing the machines to get what we need to get done as well. So that's the other angle I'm working with.
Which I think is a great idea.
And let me just add a point of clarity with that Department of Workforce and Development grant that Mike applied for and got the match requirement within the grant, that Mike wrote it for the CTE department. So that match, those in-kind, the matches that are required can come from anywhere in the CTE department. So, for example, our lighting upgrade that we had done throughout the whole building, a portion of that affected the CTE department, we can allocate towards that in-kind or that match.
Yep.
Because I think we all know if this were an ask just straight from, the district's budget, we'd be having a very different conversation, because how does it rise to the top then? In fact, Jake wasn't sure from his area that it would, but what I appreciate is the collaborative efforts, and I know that Shalyn and others are working hard to secure other donations. The FFA alumni group sounds like they're strong movers and shakers, and will be supportive too. So I think that's really important, and in fact, Katie's memo references outside funding that we're still trying to secure.
So you don't have any commitments from the FFA alumni yet?
Not anything in writing yet. We have some verbal things going on. We have some letters that are going out. We also have a few grants that we are working on that aren't 100% filled out and secure yet, but there are some things in the works.
At this time, at this time, the Antigo FFA alumni and supporters is going to support us through letters of recommendation and letters of support. Financially, they support FFA through a lot of our trips and a lot of my travel. And so at this point, I don't know fiscally if they would be able to support a financial donation at this time. And that's the conversation I've had with them in the past. But I know they're going to be right behind me to do some possible outside donations and help me move forward with that.
And I assume you've gone to the Wurst family and asked them if they'd like to upgrade their greenhouse?
I've talked to them briefly about a few things, and they wanted to know how we got to this point and why we haven't been maintaining it. So we've been treading lightly on those conversations to see what we can do. But yes, I have talked to them personally.
Hey, I just gotta say, the expected life of the panels that are the outside wall.
We've outlived them.
Twice,
Twice.
yeah,
Yes.
10 and it's
Yes.
20.
So I think
I
we
saw
done
that.
okay maintaining, but everything has a limit.
I feel like that's our district mantra.
It is, it's
Well,
exactly
when-
snapshot.
So I'm just going to say it. I call her Dorothy is my greenhouse. Her name's Dorothy, and every time there is a windstorm,
The green.
the greenhouse, I'm hoping
Dorothy
Dorothy
flies
is
away.
going to be there when I get back the next day. And so panels, Jake has been working when a panel flies off in the middle of the wind, trying to get it secure, or with plywood. It's been a struggle the last couple of years. And then that's how this is kind of all billied. But I chose not to reach out to a lot of different local people until we spoke to all of this and had our ducks in a row, because we don't need anyone to hear through the grapevine this is going. And then, so that's why we've treaded lightly, and we are in the process of getting a letter out to have more communication with our community. And I know I will have community support. It's just we want the go-ahead to really start pushing this forward so we can get this in line to potentially as soon as possible.
So I guess the direction I'd like to go is kind of get a nod from you to keep moving forward on it, bring you some bidding next month, and then at that point, maybe we'll have a little better clarity on the exact financial picture. But, until we get the bids and they really start pushing on getting donations, and Katie, just getting her feet under, today was her first day alone, so, she'll be, presenting a formal exact what this is gonna cost and where it's gonna come from, so. But just wanted to give you guys a heads up on it and make sure you're in the know and thought we were doing the
Is
right
that something
thing.
she's gonna present at the next finance committee? Will she be ready?
I don't know. I don't wanna
Okay.
speak for her.
Okay.
Mike kinda summed up that she felt confident on it, and at this
Mm-hmm.
point,
Yeah.
until we get bids and really hammer out the details.
And it would be a sealed bid.
Yep. Yeah, cause we gotta
Process.
do a sealed
Yeah,
bid process as their policy states, so.
I would say bring it here,
Okay.
since I'm finance head.
Okay.
But I think it belongs here because this committee needs to hear it first. I think that's the correct way to go. Since I'm just filling in, if there's some nodding to be done for Jake to go forward, I think it should come from the three other people.
So to be clear, what would we be bringing to buildings and grounds, you mean?
The information that Jake's gonna get.
Yeah. Formal bids.
Formal
bids.
With
Okay.
the financial plan.
Okay.
And we may have community support by then as well,
Okay.
because we'll make our reach out.
But the bids will have to be opened up at the regular school board meeting, I would think.
We do a bid opening at Central.
Okay, all
Yeah,
right,
And then we bring the results.
okay,
Yeah.
that's fine. I just,
Correct.
I think it should
That's how,
come here.
yeah, that's how we've always operated.
And I think once this moves further along, you'll get community support. for
Yeah.
that.
Does that sound good?
Yep,
Okay.
Do you have
Thank
a date on that next meeting?
next,
It'll be the second Monday of the month.
Second month.
that's gonna be second Monday, 13th,
February 3rd?
February 13th.
Always on the
6
second
p.m.
Monday. And if Katie wants to give us an update at finance, we'll accept it.
Yeah.
So-
She will. So,
That allows turnaround time for the bidding and
yeah.
In time for,
everything, okay.
Yep.
All
Okay.
right.
Wanna
Thank you.
thank-
Thank
Thank
you
you.
for all
Thank you.
providing this to
Thank
us.
Mike and Shalyn too for
Yes.
a lot of hard work.
Yes.
Being here.
thank you too. Thank you, everyone.
I like how Julie put it, that the collaboration that went on between the groups, that was really nice.
We do a lot of that here.
Yes, you do.
Okay, any other things from this committee before going forward? Okay. B, continuing district building capacity discussion. I'm going to turn it over to Danny as board president. He and I met and we started talking about the, going forward with the task force on, with some ideas, and he's going to be bringing those to your committee tonight to as we prepare to talk about it at the meeting in January. And I'll turn it over to Danny.
Dave, did you take that by Mary Kay today?
Yes, I
Oh,
did.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Mary Kay,
you asked me to do
You
it.
did good.
Man.
What you see in front of you is a document that Dave and I have been working on, and we've had some community involvement with this already. This is just a place to start. I have one.
I would assume.
This is a place to start for you to look at. I have a phone call from Ben Niehaus from WASB tomorrow night. Barry Phobes put me in touch with him as a potential facilitator, because Dave and I, when we were talking, we felt like that somebody to facilitate this outside of our district would be a great idea, rather than having somebody that's connected into our district. And basically, you see what their responsibilities would be. Mary Kay, sorry that your name was thrown in there, but that, it doesn't have to be you. It can be anybody that can keep record. You do such a good job with the board, that's why your name rose to the top there. And then the scope of the work there, as you can see, is defined in short term, 1 to 5 year, intermediate 6 to 10 year. To get a long-term plan is where we want to go, how many classrooms will be needed during each of those terms. Dave, jump in here anytime, okay? Define a plan for the best use of the current buildings and facilities of those years. I mean, Jake mentioned at the last meeting that it's pretty apparent that the middle school is going to be used for quite some time yet with our district. So we need to maybe invest more dollars into that building with some infrastructure, with some electrical work, plumbing work, you know, things like that. That's not cheap. It's going to cost something. Identify the needs of the maintaining of the buildings, 15 plus years. Identify the future scope of outdoor facilities. The time commitment would be meeting one Monday a month, right here in this room. And, you know, the ask is that the members that are participating could commit to attend most or all those sessions, and then come back again later to review this task force document. So on page 2, you'll see the task force members, which is a very comprehensive list of people within our community. And again, these are just ideas to throw on the table for discussion for tonight, for us to bring to the entire board in a couple of weeks, which the first would be all current school board members, and you know, anybody can be a part of, but I would really like for the board members, if you're going to be a part of this task force, to make that commitment to be there at all of the meetings, because you know, whenever the task force votes to put something through to the board, they're not voting to make something happen. They don't have, the task force don't have the authority to do that, but they'll be voting on bringing information to the board. Current staff members, administrators, Jake, obviously your name is at the top there. And the reason that your name is at the top is being the building and grounds person. You have a strong hand on what is going on in all the buildings, all the maintenance that needs to be done in each one of the buildings. So you would actually play a vital role in helping whoever's on this task force to say, this is what needs to be done in North Elementary. Not saying, it's not giving a dollar amount, it's going to cost us $100,000 to fix North Elementary, but actually listing, we need to replace the restroom facilities. And in doing that, it means we've got to take up all the concrete, we got to take up all the, you know what I'm saying? To list all of the nitty gritty of that, so that way the community gets to know what we're doing. And Dave and I talked with Julie about this in one of our meetings too, is we give a 10-year plan, but it's a very high level. We don't actually get into the nitty gritty to the community for them to see what needs to be done. So that's why
Just to clarify what you said about the dollar amounts?
Yes.
You're not that worried about dollar amounts, or you want?
We want dollar amounts, but not only dollar amounts.
Okay.
What does the $100,000 represent?
Okay.
And then you can itemize what that represents.
One of the concerns that was shared with us was that in 2013, when they had the last kind of task force, that was at the time when I think the way it was going was to build a new elementary south of town, one north of town, and then something happened and they went to the one mega school. What I was told was that they never let the public know what the costs were going to be to fix up what they had. And so in this case, if we're going, and I'm not saying how this should go, but let's say we're just going to end up with two buildings, and one's here and one's at the middle school eventually, because of declining enrollment, and these are the best two buildings at this point structurally. What are going to be the costs to fix up the elementaries if we kept them? If we needed in the short run to keep one elementary or two because of declining enrollment, what would we need to fix that up to keep it running? Not major stuff, but just keep it running, because eventually they're going away. And I'm not saying that's the way it should go. I'm just giving an example of, we need to let the public that's going to be in this group understand, hey, if we do nothing, here's the costs. This is what's going to cost to fix the high school, here's what it's going to cost to fix the middle school, here's what the three are going to cost us. And so that's that's one of the things we're looking for. The other thing is, on the first page down at the bottom, you'll see that we're saying to start in May. First, and that was my idea. I'll take credit for it if it's good or bad. The new board will be part of it because you have an election in April. But this gives us, after that January meeting, it gives us February, March, April, and part of May to find the people and get commitments to do this. It gives you time to look at our buildings, come up with how many rooms are in each, that kind of stuff. You probably have that. But we need that kind of information. And if I said to you, if the board said to you, we want to start February 3rd Monday, you'd probably say, Dave, that's a little quick. So we're trying to put it out with the new board and give you time to get the information that task forces want to have, so that when we get to that first meeting, we're going.
Okay.
We're giving out information, we're being upfront with the public. They
So-
just need to hear the truth.
Yep, so I guess one question I have right away is, as we went through the capacity study, or started, it's still kind of open and ongoing with Bray. We're looking at what these elementary buildings would need from a best practice. And Clint came and had that conversation with us. That's the expectation that we're following, correct? So when you ask me, what do these buildings need? I
Yeah.
am building
Yes.
to what he
Best
has
practices, yes.
Yes.
foreset, okay?
And then because if it's going to cost us big money to do what needs to be done in those three buildings, and eventually we don't need any of them, that's a number out there that will significantly go down, because maybe we're only fixing up a short term on one or two buildings. And then we're putting the major amount of the money that we need to fix probably in the middle school, because it needs some structural stuff. Danny asked me an interesting question, and he said, what's the normal grade level that we start shop? And I said 7th grade. Well, right now, shops at the middle school for 7th graders. But maybe 8 years from now, because of the declining enrollment, maybe 7th grade's at the high school and we're a 7-12 high school. we don't need that equipment here in the middle school. We need it up there or sell it or whatever we do with what's needed. We have a big space to build classrooms
Right.
within the structure. And Danny even said possibly at the music room, because it's also another big one. I don't know, but Danny said maybe that was a possibility. But maybe we pick up 3 or 4 classrooms within the middle school, just closing the shop. And so those are the kinds of things we're looking at, so that as we go forward, we can put together a plan, sell it to our public, and if we get to the point where we can say, in this specific year, we're closing 1 or 2 of the buildings, because that's when we can do it, and maybe the first year, as we're going forward, if we have a way that we don't need the first floor of the middle school, that year, we do the construction of the middle school. Or if third floor, start there, depending what we need to do with 7th grade at that time, but it's just options. We need to look at options, let our people know what truly are gonna be the costs if we stay the same, and we're not gonna need all the space at some point. So, that's where we're going, and I know it's gonna be some work for you, but it's.
No,
I know,
I'm good with it.
I know you're good with that.
I really just, in my head, we've discussed this a lot, and, there's always been different views in the community on what actually needs to be done, and that piece concerns me, because there's certainly gonna be a voice in the community that says, well, you don't need all that, you could just, touch these couple things up, and that building will be good to go, so.
But
I
that-
wanna make sure that we're on the same page. that
Exactly, and that's
where
why we wanna do
has
this.
Started this.
That's
is
why
where
we wanna
stay.
create a plan, so that we can say, 5 years from now, this is what's gonna happen.
Okay.
And if the board's behind it, and this task force is behind it, you just lay it out. At year 8, 7th graders go to the high school, whenever things fit.
Okay.
And we just lay it out. Task force, whatever the task force comes up with,
Okay.
the board should hopefully approve it, and so that the people, as we go forward, will know what the plan is. Because right now, these buildings have been probably 20 years of, if you go back to the closings and the different attempts at referendums and stuff, I think it's an opportunity for us to do something that the people of the district will understand, and as long as we can get people in here, and to me, the big thing is the business community. We need to get those people who hire people to see where we're at as a district and what our needs are going forward, and have the buy-in there also, because they all have employees that live in our district. And as Danny said the other day when he and I were talking, and I'll just say, I'm looking for the one I wanted to say. But let's say we go to Valm, and we talk to the head of Valm, and he says, I really don't want to put in that much time. Then the question will be, well, is there somebody that works for you that would be interested, that could attend the meetings, come back, give you what's going on, you share it with your employees after each meeting, here's what they're talking about, so we get stuff out to the community, so that it's going through our businesses to the people who work, and they're hearing, hey, we gotta have a plan going forward. So, I'm gonna shut up now.
You covered it all, you did.
I have a question, Danny. Are you still interested in having the board meet with Brian Bailey?
Yes, I'm glad you brought that, because as Dave was talking, that was also in my brain too. Through this process, I also want to add into this task force the potential of joining together with the community, with the YMCA, with the Aquatic Center. So that's all part of this facilities project and task force. So that needs to be included in this as well, with him being a part of this task force. I'm sorry I didn't put his name on there.
Well, that's all right. I just think a lot of the work and the steps that you have will be the same work and steps
That they're
that
doing.
that group wants to do. So as I've shared in my mind, it makes sense to kind of join forces, tag on with them, and build off
Yes.
that community momentum.
I thought that the Boys and Girls Club was on here too. Dave, I may have missed it, or,
Certainly, I think would be a great idea.
yes, they'll be added in here if they're not, that's for sure.
Yeah, this is very rough.
Like John Meadow, I know he's already serving on that committee, and
Right.
Angie Close, et cetera.
Yeah, yeah. I thought it was important to have Angie Close and Dina, if she would, from the Chamber of Commerce, because that represents the business areas for our county as well as the city of Antigo. Government representatives, it's always great to have some county supervisors and even city council members in there. You know, an area that we really look over a lot, it's a target area, is the clergy member area. I remember when I first moved here, Roxanne Borneman was the district superintendent, and as soon as I got here, she was right at my door contacting me to serve on some type of committee that she had started with clergy members. And that's a good way to get information from the school out too, is through church bulletins and things like that. Somebody else actually, Dave brought up about the recent graduates of the school that are still here. I know we can't reach out to those that are going to college in other areas, but some that are still here, that are in the workforce here, we can solicit their input as well. And then community leaders, you know, just trying to get a wide range of people from all across our community and our district. You know, the something that's not on here are ag leaders, such as maybe Shalyn could give us some names of people, because I know she's probably at her max with what she does with her family and as well as teaching and all, but maybe we can reach out to some more agriculture people, or if there's some retired strawberry people. You know, it's just a wide range, but yes, Julie, thank you for bringing that to my mind, to piggyback and bring both of those things together, because it will be a facility that will be effective with right here in this location.
So, I guess, you know, kind of going off of what you had said about timeline or whatever, I guess my intent is to keep every month, come back to this committee. Here's the pieces I got so far.
Yeah.
Good.
What am I missing? What are your thoughts? So that
Right.
once we get to May, we kind of have not necessarily approved list, but, you know, you're not seeing it for the first time in May.
Right.
And that's the idea also, that because once we get the group, and maybe we won't have the group till the end of March, beginning of April, but once we have information, we can start getting information to those people that you're providing, so that we hit the ground running.
As far as a facilitator,
What did you?
I maybe I missed it. What
So the
was there a touch
facilitator
on that?
part, you know, sorry, because I know you guys were probably reading over
Yeah.
whenever I was talking about it. My thoughts there was contacting WASB, because, you know, we're part of.
School
the-
Board Association.
The School Board Association. And they have great facilitators that do a number of things that involve schools, right, school boards. So Barry Forbes is an Antagonian. He's an attorney with the WASB Association. Barry and I got to know Barry when I first came onto the board, when he found out who I was. I was pastoring his aunt and uncle for years before they passed away. But anyhow, I reached out to Barry, and Barry said, it's great that you reached out, and I'm going to put you in touch with Ben. Am I saying his name right? Newhouse, yeah.
I met Ben at the conference that I went to over in La Crosse last summer. Seems like a very nice man, and he and I are gonna connect tomorrow night by phone. We set up a meeting for tomorrow night, because he wants to see what the ideas are, and I'm just gonna basically go over this strategic plan, and I'm gonna add in about the YMCA portion too, because that's something that our community is looking for. And we'll tie all this together and go through this process, and what he can do, if there's anything that he can do. And then the other good thing with contacting WASB is we're all gonna be there in a couple of weeks in Milwaukee, and he knows that, so if he wants to say, hey, guys, let's get together and meet in person, I don't know who's going to, I don't know who's going to the
You and-
convention, but
And Jill, right?
those that are going, if he wants to meet with us in person, you know, Julie, you're gonna be there, right?
I'm not
You're not
going
going?
this year.
Okay. Is Mary Kay? No? No? Okay. So, are you going?
I think so.
Okay,
And Jill.
So
okay.
there's 4.
So as long as it's posted that there could be a quorum of the board, because any board members could show up at any time too, but obviously no business is gonna be, how
I
you
always
post that
send that
on.
out.
You got that taken care of. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
And,
just-
and Jake, the
it's a-
other thing is, if he does want to meet with us, and I know that tomorrow night, say if he says, let's get together on Thursday night at 7 o'clock at the convention, I'll let you know, let Julie know if you guys maybe can come down just to meet with him in person. You know, I know it's a long drive just to go and meet, but,
Well, and where I was kind of getting at with the last question and then this one too is, this is a pretty big process, and I want us as a school board and district to be prepared. I guess if, we're inviting 60 people to create a task force to guide us, we need to make sure that we're collectively on the same page.
Right.
We're not,
Which is also why we put it out to start in May, because we need time to set it up right.
right,
which is another great reason to have somebody from the outside to facilitate.
right. But I think as a school, before, this list is great, but as a school board and admin team, we should probably make sure we're on lockstep before we bring
Right.
in all these community members.
Make
Not
an
making sense there.
assumption, but you're not interested in Lori Miller from the Donovan Group, who did the last strategic planning?
Honestly, I never thought of her name.
Because that is paid for.
Right.
How long are we under contract with her?
The spring,
Just
I'd
until
have to
spring, yeah.
check the,
So we're really not
April.
starting this.
Until after.
yeah.
But, what year was the CISA 10?
14?
14?
14. And didn't that have a lot of costs in it and
Did.
pretty well spelled out what we would need to spend on
Yep.
all the buildings? And so those costs were there, but the difference here, what you're proposing, Dave and Dan, is you're wanting to bring even more community members into this to try to disseminate that information. So I think all the information there at cost was there then. And if people didn't feel that they had access to the information, well, then somehow we have to do a better job of getting that to them. And that's what you're proposing here. And then my only other question is, I know Ben would probably be a great,
And I don't know that it's gonna be
Facilitator.
Ben, just somebody in his office.
but, do we need somebody who's a great facilitator, or do we need somebody like CISA 10 who can come in and look at our facilities and say, this is what you're gonna need in your facilities? And is that what Gray is trying to do right now, or they're not doing nearly what CISA 10 did for us, are they?
So the CISA 10 report is really a item by item. The door hardware was purchased in 1960, has a life expectancy of 30 years, it's now 2000, so you're 10 years past. that's really kind of the way that they went through everything. They did that with just about every item in every building. That report specifically in the opening letter explains that if we replace these items or improve these items, this is still only bringing this building back up to the standard in which it was originally created. So, we can spend all that money, do all that work, but the building is still going to be set up as a 1960s teaching environment. It is not going to bring it up to current standards. So
They weren't willing to give us the cost to bring it up to current standards, or these buildings can't be brought up to current standards?
The buildings would need significant additions to be brought up to current standards, and that is where you take that CESA report, marry it with Bray's capacity study, and can say, sure, we can use the square footage that's currently here, but it's going to take these improvements that the CESA report identified. And then in addition to that, we need more square footage constructed for these purposes at a price tag of
So
this.
is that CESA report still valid, or after 10 years here, should we be having another one done? Because, if you're gonna bring in these 60 community members, we can't be sitting here and say, well, I think that's gonna cost. We need some pretty firm number.
Correct.
And
I think it'd
the
be,
number from 10 years ago was not
Accurate.
Yeah.
No.
I wonder
can
if
you
there's
inflate
a,
that?
right. And then
Cost escalator
inflation,
calculator
right.
that we
So
could,
what we use a lot in construction is usually every year it's about a 4% increase. So that's what I use when I look
except
from.
for the last 2 years.
Well, right. That's what I look at when I, even get numbers from 5 years ago. A lot of the numbers that are on the 10-year maintenance plan that I give you started out as factual numbers that I was able to get from a certain contractor or whatever. And then I've used some assumptions along the way, such as inflation escalators. Also in the construction world, they're very good at conceptual estimating. So my first conversation is gonna be back to Bray and say, okay, if we wanna look at these elementaries, we have the addition portion, which we know that we can get current construction costs per square foot. He's likely gonna be able to help us with budgetary, it's not going to be granular where a 5-foot piece of 1-inch copper is gonna cost X dollars, but he's gonna be able to give us some guidance as far as to remodel this building, you're gonna do new flooring, paint, doors, handles, lighting. Here's a conceptual number that we can come up with, and that's why I said I'd like to try and start bringing some of that to the board so that we feel comfortable with what that looks like, what
So
those
Jake, for
numbers
the
are.
middle school, however, we're gonna be looking a little deeper than just doors, paint,
Yeah, we have boiler systems,
Yeah.
there's a lot
electrical,
more to
plumbing.
it, but.
That's what we're gonna be looking at for that.
Yeah, correct.
And face it, this building is 25, 30 years old. We need to really start looking at this building
do.
Yes.
for some things. I can just see the look on your face. There's things
Yeah.
that's really close on the radar.
Yeah, when you start walking through, you look at any of the doors, you can see chips on that edge right there. The doors are starting to lose their laminate piece on the face. The hardware's worn out. The flooring, it still looks good where it's good, but there's a lot of places where we have expansion joints, narrowings and doorways and stuff that's starting to crack and break up. And, what do? We take a beautiful building like this and put a mismatched floor? Eventually you gotta replace the whole floor. You can't just patch.
Yeah.
Can't just duct tape over.
Nope.
Tape and
It
wire
has such
coat
fancy
hangers.
patterns now.
So I remember Clint Sell talking about if we were interested in remodeling, there's only expansion possibilities at West Elementary, not the other two. So does it help us to consider that as we put this information?
I think
forward?
so. In fact, Dave and I did talk about that the possibility of saying we could make West Elementary and this is just spitballing on the table, right? Pre-K, kindergarten, first grade facility with an addition on there to make that happen, those 3 grades all total in that building. And then 2 through 6 at the middle school, 7, 12 at the high school, as a transition to then just eventually go into 2 buildings, the high school and the middle school building. North and east was nowhere on my thought because of listening to Clint and really seeing that those properties are basically landlocked.
It's just so difficult to hear about the inefficient bathrooms, for example.
Yes.
You know, but to bring those up to modern standards, I don't think is worth it because I feel like the lifetime use of those buildings has. Now cosmetically, whatever we can, you know, continue, I always think of it as limping along short term, but I think to completely renovate those buildings wouldn't be cost effective, but that's just my.
Right, and that's, another question that I have then is when we look at following Bray's recommendations, he says we need substantial additions to keep these elementary buildings operating on the grade structure that we are. That's not possible at 2 locations. So, do we just say those buildings are off the table now?
Not right now.
You know, I'm.
But that has to
When
come.
you're asking for costs.
Well, yes, we need the
If
cost.
I give a cost for an addition that won't fit on the property,
What's the point?
what's the point of it? Yeah.
Right, but I'm saying the people in this task force need to know,
Okay.
hey, if we did what Bray says we need to do to make North to operate at today's best practices, we can't do it there
Okay.
because it's landlocked. Same with East.
Yeah,
Did I say that right?
problem
Yes.
Yep.
With Clint's assessment of West, because he put that down at 8 point some acres.
And he,
You gotta
we talked,
decide
yeah.
if you really
No,
wanna,
no, we're gonna dial the football field off of that.
that's really only a couple
Right.
acres there, at most.
But
Yep.
So it makes you wonder if it's really doable.
Yeah, do you really want to be expanding that, getting rid of the parking lot, getting rid of the playground?
We were just starting from the fact that there is that amount of land there that we own. If we don't want
That'd be
to
a good
touch the football
discussion area
field,
for this committee to.
then we
Yeah.
can take it off,
Schofield Stadium.
but Clint didn't want to
I'll bring
take
my
that
paper.
upon himself to make that decision.
Right.
We should move Schofield to the high school.
We could.
That'll be cheap. I think that the whole point to providing the information to the task force and thus the community is, yes, the referendum only failed by a small amount, but what we hear is that the referendums failed, we can't pass a referendum, we can't pass the referendum. But the amount of information that we provide and the decision that we come up with is that the end result gets passed. I mean, that's really
That's where we're gonna
That
That's
would be the
really the
goal.
goal. So
Yes.
yes, we know that that's not feasible, we know that that's not possible, but they need to know what that dollar amount is in order to be successful in the end, right? So that's, I think, yes, we know we can't do it, but we need them to know.
It just looks different from my scope when you're asking for exact costs.
And it seems like a waste of time because you know you can't do
Or walking through
it.
the process with them, those are 2 different paces. Am I preparing a finished document, or are we gonna kind of get there together?
We might have to show them the way.
Right. Okay.
That's why your name's first on that list. No pressure.
Yeah.
We got confidence in you.
Yeah, we do.
Then it will be frustrating knowing that you feel like it's a waste of time, but we
Well, I
need
just
to.
want to make sure that we're all on the same page.
I do
I'm fine.
have to say, the times that I have been on, the years that I've been on the board with Andy has always been one to say, what's this about Schofield Stadium? He's always brought Schofield Stadium up. And I think at some point, we're gonna have to decide, right? I mean, that's what I've heard you over the last 6 years, and
It's not really my decision, when I look at the Gridiron Club. There is a lot of history there. There's a lot of support for the district there. When you talk about you want to include manufacturers, well, that's a lot of the Gridiron Club. And, you know, if they say, oh, yeah, we want to go over to the high school, that's fine. But whatever I have to say about it doesn't mean much. It's really up to them. You know, that's a big part of our community. And you're talking here, you're saying we need to get the community behind this. Well, some things they're gonna get behind and some things they're not. And there's no point in saying, oh, we gotta get rid of Schofield Stadium at the expense of not doing what we really wanna do.
So, yeah, I guess, just circling back to the timeline and who the facilitator is, I just think that we need to make sure that the facilitator and the school district are on the same page before we go and set aside a timeline and invite community members in. I think it'd be important that we make sure that we spend a little bit of time making sure we're on the same page.
Not suggesting, just asking, does Clint ever do the facilitation part of a facility study, or is he strictly behind the scenes?
I don't know that it would be wise to have Clint, because
Well,
the reason I'm thinking is,
The
I don't want anybody to
obligation
think that
go
he's gonna
with,
come
yeah.
with a skewed mind, say, hey, let's just forget about this and build a brand new
Correct.
building.
That's
Yeah.
true.
I mean, obviously, who doesn't like a brand new shiny whatever X is, but it always comes with a cost. And I think Clint would come with, he may not come with that, but we may have people that may think that.
Right.
So I
That's
think
true.
Clint would be considered part of the district, you know, because we've seen him so much.
Yeah. Yep.
I don't think Clint can have a very good view of what public schools will look like in 10 years.
Probably not.
No, probably not.
So
Yeah.
maybe Ben has a little better view of what that would be.
Yep.
So after my conversation with Ben tomorrow night, what's tomorrow, Tuesday, Wednesday? Julie, are you open Wednesday for a call? You know, I can call you Wednesday and say, this is where we come up with. We can get a memo out to the building committee and to let them know that Ben or somebody in his group of facilitator from WASI can talk to us about this, and the potential for us to be there the very next week in Milwaukee to see the person in person with Andy and Kristen and Jill and I.
Well, I'm sure he'd have a good opinion on, you know, like Andy asked, that do we update that CISA report or not? Or, you know, he may have
Exactly.
some guidance as how to get us through this. That
Exactly.
we'll have to do some legwork before we fire it
Yeah,
off
yeah.
too, so. Just wanna make sure we do it right the first time. Or this
Absolutely.
time.
Yes, agreed.
Absolutely.
Okay, we're closing in on 7:15, and I know there's another meeting, so someone gonna make a motion to adjourn?
So, to come up to the board meeting on the 23rd, we're just gonna show all the other board members and get this task force list, and, you know, if anybody here wants to tweak this a little more between now and then as to what we need to do, that can be done too.
And it's not like we're going out, like anybody on the list, that we're going tomorrow to talk to them. No, this is down the road, but we gotta get started
You know,
with the facts.
Right.
So, need a motion?
You can
Huh?
just-
no,
Oh, then I'm leaving.
Yep. Alrighty, let's call this meeting to order. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clint, you can just come up here. Is that okay?
Oh, yeah, come on down. Mary Kate will take roll call, please.
Kristen Matt Miller,
Here.
Maggie Schreiber, Trina Bordeman,
Here.
Heidi Seaver,
Here.
Dr. Julie Sprague,
Here.
Danny Pyatt.
here,
don't think we have any public comment from our... All right, we'll start with the new business. Vaping response is our first. I just wanted this on the agenda since it was brought to the board's attention of concern, so I just wanted to get some more information and follow up as to what was going on.
Can pass those around, please.
You know, when I first saw this, I thought this was related to that lawsuit that's going
Oh,
on. That's-
Jewel.
Yeah, the Jewel lawsuit, yeah, that's, okay. I thought maybe we wanted a ton of money or something.
In conjunction with that, you can take these and pass them around. And these, they were in my car for about an hour. I got mine. And then these. It's middle school. The first one was high school. Second one is middle school, and then this is alcohol, and I'll tell you why I'm including that. So just so you have it before you kind of look through. So it might just be if you want to review this one pager, and then see if there's any questions. That's why Clint is here too. Sorry. Oops. Oh, good. So we collected some data from the high school, and so you'll see that in the first section. So far this year regarding vaping. And to be clear, we're still the data that they put in, we still, part of looking at the data is looking at any maybe errors in how the data is being entered or getting tighter on the data, or are we pulling the right information? So for example, it could be vaping, but it also could be a marijuana, or it might just be tobacco, right? So these were just vaping incidences from the beginning of the school year. And then how many students, and then it just kind of breaks it down. And then this document was used, we kind of generated it as a group just today, looking at the data, but then also to use this internally to be able to start asking questions. So as the teams meet, like, why are we seeing these? How, what other data sources do we have? And really, like Megan said today, the purpose of looking at data is to ask more questions and have more answers, right? So that's kind of, you'll see some of those questions that we would be asking. We did look at comparing it to last year, but this is really kind of I would say a baseline year based on the way that they're collecting the data and how the responses that they're using, because they did update their policy this year. And Clint can talk to that a little bit about, what they're seeing with regards to having a tighter policy, at least more progressive policy anyway. So you'll see that 58 total vaping incidences last year, and we're already at 47 for this year. And then so we start asking, why are we seeing so many more? And there might be a lot of different reasons why that is. So you'll see some of the things we generated of potential whys. And then I thought it would be important, and that's what you have in front of you, is YRBS data. And that second part, number 3, talks a little bit about, so the first part is tobacco, and there's high school, middle school.
Pause just for a second.
Yeah, go ahead.
YRBS, Youth Risk Behavior
Yes.
Survey, that we have the option of taking this survey along with a number of.
National.
Everybody,
Yeah.
all other schools. So
The
that's what that-
CDC actually runs this, so like we go by their timelines. So we'll be doing it again, even though we're just looking at some of the data this year. Because of COVID, they had shifted when we took it, so we're actually going to be taking it in the spring, so it's a little tight window, but we are going to take it again this spring so that we have consistent data instead of skipping even, so I was a little.
It's every 2 years.
It's every 2 years, but normally it's in the spring, but they pushed it, the spring one from 2021 to the fall of 21, but we didn't get our data back until this last summer, so then we couldn't look at the data and really, so now it's coming due again, and we talked about, well, do we do it or not? And after talking with DPI, it's really important that we do it for trend's sake. Because of cohorts of students, we would miss a whole 4 years of students in the cohort, and we don't want to do that, so.
So this is student self-reporting
Yeah.
in response to the questions
And
about
we'll-
vaping and alcohol.
We've talked about it before with the board. That's one that parents and guardians can opt out of. They're given the option.
Yeah, it's passive consent, so we don't send out, do you want your kid to do it or not? We put it out there, and if they don't, they have to let us know.
But we're clear about that. I
Yep.
don't want them to think we're.
Yep, oh yeah, no, they give us all the documentation to send, to make sure parents know, and we're just starting to generate what we want in the testing. They have a general battery of questions, and then you can opt into certain ones, so we're in the process of picking the optional modules, so like mental health is one, and then like 2 years ago it was COVID. They had optional modules like the impact of COVID. And then we'll do protective factors probably as well. That's another module. So that'll be decided by the end of the month.
And that's what these colored sheets
Yeah, so
reference.
the whole YRBS is 155 pages. I just pulled the section that had to do with tobacco and vaping. And then I just thought it was interesting, the alcohol, and we'll talk a little bit about that, but just as a reference point. So the main questions in the high school one, you'll see, is currently vaping. So if somebody is asked, and again, remember, these are last year's, so then in some of the data that I generated, I pushed that forward so that it represented this year's kids. So like 8-12 was actually kids that took it 7-11 last year. And so it's currently using, like, I'm a regular user, or I've at least tried it once. So you'll see that in here. And then they also have questions about cessation, which I find interesting too, because half of our students that responded want to quit. So we got to figure out how to help them quit, right? So that was promising, right? Go ahead.
Can I just
Yeah.
add, I've been at the high school when, like with Matt Moronk or somebody, if somebody's caught vaping and we have those conversations. And it's my own personal feeling, but when a student really is addicted, in fact, I think you heard one talk about a different addiction, and then that help isn't available, that is tough. Because to leave it to, a minor to try to handle that addiction, you can predict the outcome. Anyway, sorry.
No, that's okay. So you'll see in here kind of some of the trends in the data. And one thing I wanted to point out as I looked at it, the alcohol piece. We're focused on tobacco, but if you look at alcohol, significantly more students are using and potentially binging and abusing alcohol than vaping. And I think, I ask why we're so focused on vaping. It's because it's in our face. Although we do have kids who have come to school and they have used alcohol or they're using it at school, that might be more attention than actually being, alcoholic. I don't know. I think it comes with a lot of different issues. But if you notice that 2 times as many 9th graders reported they're currently using alcohol, 8% more 10th graders, 2 times as many 11th, and 3 times as many 12th grade students are reporting that they use alcohol on a regular basis. And so what I guess the point in bringing that up is that this isn't just a vaping issue or an alcohol issue. It's a why are kids using things to make them feel better, or how are they getting addicted? Like when we talk about AODA, we're talking about all of those things that come with it. And if you'll notice, they will make some, on the binge drinking, and the end of the binge drinking one, they give kind of like a synopsis of, it says among students who drank, 37% of them had their first drink before age 13. In general, such students are also more likely to report indicators of trauma, violence, or abuse. So that's the point in looking at this in totality. And we actually had that discussion today when we were talking about it is the cause of other behaviors vaping, or is other behaviors the cause of vaping? You know what I'm saying, like chicken before the egg. And so I think that we have to look at this as what they're bringing to the table, what choices they're making, and then how can we impact some of those choices, and then how can we go back to the beginning and try to prevent. And give some, like I talked about, those protective factors, how can kids, and we can build their immunity to it as they move forward, because they're going to be bombarded by all of it, not just outside, but in their own homes. So that was kind of that part. Any questions about the data piece?
There's a very strange question.
Sure.
Probably, there's not an answer to it, but, or no way to find out. Is there a way to find out if a student is just answering some of these questions just to see how far, how bad they can make themselves look? In other words, I don't drink, so would they say, I had 5 drinks today? You know what I'm saying? Is there?
It's only
Some
30,
of those.
how they do it is it's at least once in 30 days.
Yeah.
And then they compare that to vaping. So they're asking the same question, like, I vaped in 30 days, in the last 30 days, or I've drank. And they just consider that a current usage. And over time, they've given this so many times, they can see trends. So you can kind of parse out some kids that are going to answer it that way, or lie, honestly say, oh, I don't do any of it, and they do it, right?
So if I did the
So-
test today, or the survey today, and I did it again next year, they would have the data to prove that I wasn't honest the first year.
Well, it's anonymous.
It's anonymous. That's what I'm saying. It's more about
Okay.
trends in student behaviors.
Okay.
So a kid could lie, but what they're seeing is these trends are bearing true over years.
People far smarter than I am know about validity and
Yeah.
reliability scales and surveys and studies. I can't speak to it, but I know they have those measures built in and accounted for, so that if you do have those outliers, it wouldn't significantly skew the data.
Some questions are also asked in different ways.
Yep.
On the same.
Kind of like a perceiver,
survey.
yeah.
So it'll cancel each other out
Yeah.
if you answer it in a way where you're lying on one of them.
Yeah. That's a good point. That's like what they used to do in a perceiver test, when people, like, when you apply for a job. Wausau used to do this, Everest used to do this, where they would ask an interviewee multiple questions. They'd ask the same one multiple times. And it can see. But to be honest, a self-report, you're always going to have a measure of error in it.
Okay.
But why it's anonymous is so that kids feel like they can tell the truth.
And really,
So-
it's not made for schools to use. It's made for the CDC to plan their programming
Sure.
around.
Yep.
And we just get the benefit
Yep.
of, here's this free data we got with your
Yes,
kids. So,
yes, good
Well, I'm like
point.
Julie, we see this problem, so what can we do to help those kids?
right.
The community asks us for this all the time, too. So we get, every time we do it, you'll have the health department asking, hey, have you gotten your YRBS yet? Aspires will ask, have you gotten your YRBS yet? Because they use those data points as well to look at it from a community perspective and the things that they're going to do, so. Responses, so, and Clint can talk more about this too, I'm just going through first offense, citation through the city. It's $25 per offense. I don't think that it increases yet. School and community stakeholders are meeting to address. I know Matt met with some people on Friday, Matt Maronk
And Officer Schilling.
and Officer Schilling, to address potentially increasing the amount. However, an interesting factoid that we came up with today is our current data would suggest that we have low amount of students who are multiple offenders. Now, that has to be taken as a caveat that we know that there's other kids that are not being caught vaping, but out of the 39 that were caught, 32 of them did it once. 7 of them were multiple offenders. So I'm not saying we should or shouldn't try to increase it. I'm just telling you that if we're looking at it as a deterrent, we already are, right now, how we're deterring it is, if you'll see in, I don't know if that got put in there, but the policy, our tobacco policy was revised in August, and it's pretty progressive, like first offense, in-school suspension half-day, and Clint can talk more about that.
Yep, you get a $25 fine and half-day of in-school suspension on your first offense, and the second offense, it's $50 fine, and
Okay.
a full day of in-school suspension, and then the third offense is a $100 fine and 2 out-of-school days of suspension.
Is the fine coming from the school or the police department?
Police department.
Schools can't find.
Well,
That's all they are.
we can, I wanted to, we talked about that today. And Matt, even in Matt, working with, is it Courtney?
Yeah.
So we talked about the very issue of, yeah, we could institute a fine at school, but how are we going to?
Oh, I don't think it's a good idea.
No,
I just can't
enforce
believe
it.
That's how low they are.
Well, yeah, and the city, he checked all around too, in different city ordinances or whatever. They can go through that process. They're the ones that said, well, why don't you, instead of us doing it, why don't you just, as a school, impose a fine? Well, we're not gonna do that. We're not gonna be able to enforce it. What, are we gonna not let them graduate if they don't? I mean, like, we already.
That's illegal.
I'm just telling you, that's what she was telling us to do, and we, even on just face value, Matt's like, no, if we're gonna do this, we need to go through the city or whatever to increase it.
But sometimes the point of citations is to get juvenile justice involved, or to get more services involved,
Yep.
instead of like getting in trouble. And I think that's, anyway, that's not a school problem, that's a larger
Absolutely,
problem.
yeah.
How does that compare to like if an adult was smoking on campus? What is there citation? Does anyone?
Oh, I don't know.
I was just.
That's a good question.
I don't know that we've ever given one, because nobody wants to tell somebody to quit smoking when they're walking across the schoolyard.
I just-
Have you, good job. Adults are pretty good about it,
I
so.
really
I
haven't seen any.
I was just curious what that citation
That's a
would be.
good question. So,
Do we have, hopefully no children are watching this, do we have any vape machines? And if you don't want to answer that, that's okay.
Any what?
Like vape machines where like I just call them a vape machine, detector, like vape detectors?
We don't currently, but we are investigating that. We borrowed one from the sheriff's department and did a couple trial runs with it, and are currently trying to get in touch with Medford, because Medford uses, it's just a metal detector wand, and.
Oh, wait, we're talking about two different things. What are you talking about?
Oh, you're talking about
Like
in the
like,
bathroom
yes,
thing.
that's,
Okay.
but I'm interested
I
in
was
that.
talking about so if like my tie clasp, because Kyle and I were trying around, my tie clasp will set it off. Or,
Oh.
Yep, the pen, or Kyle had a vape that he just put in his pocket.
Yeah.
And it beeped off on that. But you're talking about the.
Like the smoke
individualized-
detector
Yes, we
deals.
did look at those, and we had a little, session with the company, and they showed us how it worked and the ins and outs, and it's not specific to just vaping, the one that we looked at, because it can identify loud noises and it'll categorize them as a gunshot or a physical altercation or something like that, and then you'll get an alert. They were to the tune of about 10,000 apiece when we looked at them, and that was.
and for cost benefit, for what you're gonna,
And the kids, from talking to some of the other schools that had them, the kids find ways around that too,
and we have
Well,
to be careful
and
about
we
probable
caught,
cause.
or 32 for one offense. We know there are more. It's interesting because in talking with other schools too, like Wassa West, when I had that conversation, if someone smells it in the bathroom, which is pretty common because during passing time or whatever, they don't even investigate anymore. Because it takes, as Clint will tell you, so much time. But then the unintended message is, well, nothing happens if you vape. Not true, we just wish kids would stop bringing it to school. I don't know if we can ever get them to stop, but it's what they're doing at school that, is our business.
Yeah. And, in the conversation that Heidi, Matt, and Megan and I had today, we were talking about this year, kids are reporting stuff more. And I think part of it is our focus on really looking at our attendance and hallways, and they're so closely tied with
Yes.
attendance, hallways, bathrooms, vaping, that whole package. I think if you took a random snapshot of our hallways in the last month to 2 months compared to the beginning of the year, you would see a drastic difference and a difference from last year too.
Better,
Yeah. Yep.
which is good.
Well, and that goes back to the chicken before the egg, is trying to, we have to get kids engaged in class, we have to be proactive in the hallways so that they know. We also know that 8th and 9th, if you saw 8th and 9th are where we're getting most of our incidences, it's because they can't escape off campus, because like 10th and 11th, 12th, they're still doing it, but they're smarter about it, and that's, just being honest. And they have means to take their car and go and whatever they're gonna do. 8th and 9th graders are trapped here, and so, that sounds bad, but you know what I mean. And so they are, that's just some of we're hypothesizing about why it is that we're catching them, and they're immature and, but it's, a lot of times, it's wrapped up in other behaviors too. The one and done kids are the ones that, right? And just speaking to the wands and all of this stuff, I don't want us to get overly focused, like Julie was talking about, like what do we have control over? Because it does take, we don't want to spend our time always catching kids doing that. We need to focus our resources in trying to, somebody standing with a wand, plus we get into probable cause, and yes, we have a lower threshold at school of what you can search kids for and all of that, but that's not the environment we want. We want kids to not do it in the first place, or at least build some of those other skills and not just be looking for them to be doing it,
Clint and I talked that as we try to grow student engagement and achievement, and so more want to be in class
Yeah.
because they respect their teacher, they care about their own education and try to change the culture. As that grows, we believe vaping and other incidents of misconduct, if you will, are going to decline, because it's all related, as you know.
Any questions about responses?
I'm just curious if I can, and you already know how I feel about this. I know suspensions are necessary. I suspended plenty of kids in my day, I get it. I always struggle with, let's say you're vaping, so that means you're not in class if you're vaping, and then the response, in addition to the fine, is missing class, up to 2 full days, not even in school. That is a conflict for me. I don't like, but I also don't know, and we've had a bazillion conversations about this, how do you send the message that it's not okay and there will be consequences, other than you miss out on your education, which we desperately need you in class.
Well, when the fine's $25, 25, 50, 75. If you've got enough to buy a vape, that's $20 right there. I think
The kid told me, like, I asked him, I'm like, oh, how much is a vape device? And he's like, well, I think probably 22, 23 bucks. So it's pretty much the first one. But
Well, let's go back though to the data. So 32 kids did it once. Okay. 7 had 2 or more. I'm guessing that of those 7, all, if not the majority of those kids, have other issues going on that vaping is not, school's probably not a priority. So the fine itself, I'm not saying don't, I think we'll get some if we increase the fines, we'll get some who don't bring it to school or don't vape at school. But that's just one little, it's not gonna take a significant chunk out of, because we already know that whatever is being done right now is having some impact. So whether the city wants to do it, we wanna push it, I don't know that we're gonna see a huge amount, because those same kids, those 7, those 5, they're probably, I'm just guessing, demographically, they're probably not gonna pay that fine anyway.
Oh, okay.
So,
mean, like,
I'm just saying, and so
It's
I'm not saying we
likely,
don't.
yeah.
I'm not saying we don't raise it, or we don't push to raise it. I'm just saying, I don't know how much of that we have to do more on what Julie's talking about, and which we are trying to do, and incentivize kids for being here. Just the culture and the climate of the school has to continue to get better.
I'm
So-
all for raising
Yeah.
that, because I wish parents and guardians, because not all are upset about it.
right.
Oh, yeah, no, they do it together.
Well, I think
I
because
sent
they-
Kristen
right.
the email back to her. I said, this is not just a school. Kids do it with their parents. They can get it at any gas station. Don't tell me that they care that they're buying those vapes. They get them online. They get
It's
them from
tough.
people. It's there. There is no, this is a community response.
Siblings or whatever.
So,
And that's a good point too, because when we do attend like the health department meetings and whatnot, you know, they're all over this too in terms of
yeah,
how
it's a health
widespread
issue.
it is in our community.
And I guess that's kind of my point, like, if you're not making the family uncomfortable in some
Sure.
sort of a way, whether it's a conversation with an officer,
Sure.
a larger amount of money, the kid being at home, you know, like, whatever that's making them uncomfortable, you're not gonna see that change.
It's gonna deter some.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I have a hard time with, you did something that doesn't impede academic time and it wasn't a disruption to academic time and taking more academic time away from you, because you probably don't want to be in that classroom anyway.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So I have a harder time with the first offense. I think citation the first offense, and even if it's not, maybe it's a referral instead of a citation. I mean, that depends on what the county is willing to work with, what the police officer is willing to work with. But I think suspension is the second time, or if they're lying to you about it. But if you're honest and give it up and say, yep, that was me. All right, here's your ticket. Go back to class, learn something. That's why you're here anyway. But that's, I don't know, why take more academic time away from kids who are probably struggling anyway? But, I mean, if you do it a second time, well, guess what? Do it now, you're spending the day with me, or, you know, something like that.
The way
Like,
that
you gotta
they're-
make them uncomfortable.
The
or
way
you're
that
not gonna
they're
get
doing
change.
ISS now, I think, is a little bit more impactful. I mean, we haven't met recently, so I don't know how much it's changed, but kids can earn their way out of it by getting their work done. Like, it's not just sitting and twiddling their thumbs, they're
Yeah, they were
making
talking
them.
about that.
Yeah,
Which
so,
I love.
and, you know, doing circle, doing groups, you know, little mini ones, you know, trying to make it so they don't want to be in ISS.
Exactly.
They would rather be in class.
That's a lot of time
It
to
is.
do nothing.
Yeah, so I don't know if you have any updates on that, Clint, but.
Yeah, it happened as recently as today. Well, a student was in a couple classes in the morning. They had a ISS because they had accumulated 9 tardies, and they were in a couple classes in the morning because of fast bridge testing, and then they were back in ISS, but he worked his way and went back to class the last 2 hours of the day today. And he was, because when I talked to him about it, he's like, what? I can what? I said, yeah, you work your way out by doing your schoolwork. He's like, well, I got this, and this done. I need this, it's in my locker. I said, well, let's go get it, and brought him back, and he worked.
And I think
really
they're
hard.
seeing less repeats. I have a meeting with Scott coming up, but less repeat offenders that are going to ISS, which is a good thing too. They don't want to be there.
Some of
So,
them really struggle with the tardy thing.
yeah,
That's just this individual that I talked to,
Yeah.
he really struggles with the tardy. He does not like ISS, but
yeah,
Morning
figure that out.
tardy or throughout the day tardy?
throughout the day.
yeah. Me too. I really struggle with it.
Can see me running here. Is there, I know it would be really difficult, but is there some way that instead of, that we could punish the passing time? Like you have to stay in your classroom?
They do that with some.
Because I feel
Like a
like
delayed
that's,
passing time?
Yep.
I don't know, a shorter passing time, an escorted passing time, because,
It's just challenging with, you know, a lot of parents even, you know, one of their requests is, well, can somebody walk him to class? And
You come in and walk in the
yeah,
class.
yeah,
Oh,
you're more than
we've had
welcome.
Parents come in and walk them to class, and a lot of kids don't like that, you know, some kids are okay with it, but a lot of kids don't like it. But it's just, how many people can we
you know.
It's usually
afford for
really effective when we can do that, and I've been a part of some of those plans too at the high school, but then it's always a one-to-one situation, like Kelly Kohler, I'm thinking
Yeah.
of. She did so much for one of her students, and like every passing time, and then it would prevent him from getting into trouble, but at whose expense? Hers, you know?
Right.
But when, for the more significant, they have tried that.
But we've also had the addition of Scott Sigmund, our behavior strategist, and that has been helpful. And Terry Stager's another one, behavior interventionist, that really helps with some of those plans. I say some because still, we don't want to dedicate that one-to-one piece all the time. On certain instances, for a period of time, yeah, maybe we can accommodate that, but it can't be a consistent thing that's going to last.
Well, and I think they're shifting, eventually you want to shift it to where it's more of that assets based and that proactive, where not only wanting to be in class, but having, like you guys have built in ahead of time, this is how you're going to get to go to prom, or this is how you're going to get to go to homecoming. You have good attendance, you have, like, we have to at some point put the onus on the kid, but they have to have that, what is that motivation that's going to have them, instead of always being on the back end, because we don't have the supports and the resources to do that for every kid. So eventually, hopefully, that switches. But some of the other proactive stuff that we're doing is we did add, as you know, the health class at the 8th grade, or not 8th grade, it's through the middle school. And they're building in some of the social, emotional, and also the protective factors within health class, so they work together. The counseling classes, 7 mindsets, community engagement through Action Alliance. So I know that there's a poster contest specifically on vaping that's happening, and just some other activities that Bree and Amanda are working with Action Alliance to try to engage the community. And then also, Bree and Amanda Bree is done with Smart Recovery. It's an evidence-based AODA program. But again, that's reactive, but it's at least having 2 people on staff that are trained, not just with vaping, it's all kind of drug use, to maybe do some groups and things like that. And then I'm always an advocate of trying to engage student voice, getting exactly why they're doing it, when they're doing it, who they're doing it, not as a punitive, but getting more, we can look at all the data we want, but what is it that they are saying about all of that, and then continuing to engage our community and families in some way. So it's kind of what we got.
Are the counselors still trained in Esprit?
Yes.
I think we only have one who's not. But we're still working on our systems of support, especially at the high school, and how that tier 1 to tier 2 to tier 3 works. But they do have some kids, but the issue is they can do that, come up with a plan, but then coming up with a time to be able to meet. That's the hard part. So refining who's going to actually have that done.
Sure.
Things like that, so they're still working on that. Those are, an Esprit is like, I don't even know what it stands for, maybe you do, but for those like tier 3 students who are really struggling and they're moving through, and, then they meet with a counselor, what are their really going on, and then they come with a plan that's with goals that are specific to this. Kind of like a Columbia screener, but a Columbia screener's for suicide that we do, but an Esprit is more like.
Like, they want to be motivated, so.
Yes.
I know that I'm struggling with vaping, I don't know how to stop it, I don't know how to make my friends
Yeah.
realize that I'm not going to do it anymore, and so then you set these mini goals
Yeah.
working with them every
Stands
week.
for a step-by-step guide for screening and intervening for unhealthy alcohol
Yeah.
and other drug use.
So, but that's like down the line. You've already tried this and this and this, and that's like the super high needs kids that.
It's a nice, filling the gap when we don't have great community resources for kids when it comes to AODA, addiction stuff.
Yeah.
So it's a nice little way to fill the gap, and it's already at school.
Yeah, so, And I think we only had 2 incidences of vaping at the middle school, so that's why I didn't really focus on the middle school, so, which is a good thing.
Really good thing.
But we had 12% of our students in 6th grade who had tried it last year, so that tells me, you know, they're experimenting at a young age, so keep trying, but.
For
Okay.
the YRBS survey, Julie, is it possible that before the survey goes out, because I know in the past we've had family members that have contacted board members after the fact. Can that survey go out to the board members before the student?
It's online, you can get the questions, so we
Okay.
can share, yeah, the questions are, like, you can go in, and, I mean, I can send it to,
So the questions don't change from year to year?
no, I mean, they can't, because otherwise you wouldn't be able to get reliable data.
But wasn't there a question that you guys?
You can add modules, but the modules are already pre-created. It's
Okay.
just that we added it because we have a certain need, let's say mental health. And
Okay.
we've done it the last
Okay.
2 rounds.
So are you sending it to the board?
Yeah, I mean, I
Or
can.
the link? I think I
Yeah.
did once.
It's
already.
right on, it's actually, when you go to the DPI website and you look up YRBS, it says, here's the questions. And anybody can have access to any of the questions.
Okay.
So,
But if you're changing the modules for the students here specific?
they're not
that's
changed,
what-
we just decided we're gonna do them
This is
again.
what we're going to do.
Yeah, and it'll say right in there, if you choose to do the mental health
Yeah.
module, here are the questions. And
Yeah.
if you choose to do this module, here are the questions. So it's all right out
Okay.
there, yep. I think where some of the concern came I think in the past was middle school.
Yeah.
You know, the types of questions that are asked, because it might get, you know, something that they don't want their kid
Well,
to be
they're asking
asked.
about healthy and unhealthy
They are.
behaviors, so if you don't think
So-
your middle schooler's doing something, they might not be, but
Yeah,
they're
they
still
might not be,
asking
but
about
12% of them have, so, you know, that's just one, but like, a lot of times it might be the sexual questions, like, you know, but they don't ask those specifically, like, some people thought they were asking them and they weren't. Middle school doesn't ask, but, you know, like, it's middle school, that's why they have it. We have to do both at the high school because 8th grade is considered middle school, so we kind of we have to do the 9-12 and then have the 7-8.
So I'm on DPI, I don't see the actual questions,
Oh.
but I
They had-
just,
Okay,
I see results and,
I'll find it, because I know
Okay.
that I could go in and
yeah,
get the questions.
okay, thank you.
Yep.
All right, anything else on that? Okay, we will move along to open enrollment, special education seats.
We just have to do this yearly. So what you have in there is the same as last year. The reason that we do 0 is because we have caseloads that, I would say we have good caseloads as far as numbers of students. So I like to keep that balanced. But we have accepted students with IEPs in open enrollment. We still have that option if we had a few from Wittenberg this year who
When is open enrollment?
always, let's not pretend,
Oh.
it's always.
Is there a set date or?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, from February to April is open enrollment.
okay.
And then from April till the 1st of July, then there's kind of a time when you're getting all of your open enrolled students placed. And then alternative open enrollment starts July 1 through the rest.
So it is
Forever, yeah.
year round.
Okay.
And like I said, I can still do it case by case. So we had 3 students who wanted to enroll in the district, and we looked at their situation, and we took them, even though 1 or 2 of them had IEPs.
Which makes me proud.
So, you know, we just always balance it. But this gives us an option that if we don't have room, that we don't have to take students, but we generally will.
And this is what'll come to the board on the 23rd.
So yeah, we have to be very specific in the language, as you see. You can't just, you can't base it on disability. You can't say, oh, I'm going to take students with a learning disability, but I'm not going to take students with an emotional disability. You can base it on program, which is what we do, or school, or something like that, so that we're not being discriminatory.
Okay. And then the last one is the least restrictive environment. This comes from the changes that were going on when we're at convention. And there were some questions that came up during the board meeting that Heidi wanted to provide more information so that we were making a more educated decision.
Let me find my, yeah, I pulled up. Yeah, and I apologize if and maybe this came up really quickly, and not that you have to bring these to me or anybody else, but this was the first time I had seen them. And
The resolution.
the resolutions, because it's not my thing, you know, like, I figure if you want my input, you'd ask, but I have no idea. And so when I was seeing them the first time too, and so then when the discussion was going on, I was like, I don't think that's really what they mean, and I don't want there to be a misunderstanding for, so, for example, like, now parents have more of a say than they did before. Parents have always had the same say as they will continue to have in an IEP team meeting. And so it really was around least restrictive environment, those questions like how do you make a decision about whether a student is in a regular classroom versus in a pullout or all of that. So that's why I just wanted to make sure that we're going to make decisions based on the law, the IEP team. There's equal voice around the table. A parent has as much say as a special ed teacher, as a specialist, as a student. And I think what comes down to it is if a parent doesn't feel that, they have recourse like mediation, or they can file due process if they feel that the rights of their student aren't being met, whether that's they're in the classroom, they don't want them to be, or they're out of the classroom and they want them to be in the classroom. That's why we really try to have those discussions. An understanding of least restrictive environment means that student is expected to have access to their general ed peers and their general ed curriculum, unless there is a decision that their needs, their specialized needs cannot be met in that environment. And that's a really big decision. That is taken very seriously. So if there was any questions about it, I know that these resolutions are what they are. Like, this is the standing of the state board. It doesn't mean that it has any impact on how we're going to do business, the law, or even what you as a local board chooses to do. You can choose to do the opposite, I'm sure. So it was just more of a making sure that if you had questions about it, or in the future, if there's things like that that are changed, like high-cost transportation or things like that, if you wanted me to give my 2 cents or see what we should be doing as a board, like, whether you take it or not, that's kind of where it came from, so.
Well, you'll find too, Heidi, whenever I first came on, went to the very first convention, some of these resolutions have been on there for 6 years.
Yeah.
Because it's something that WASB feels that it's important,
Yeah.
and they keep pushing it out to the legislatures, and it just keeps going nowhere from the
Yep.
legislation.
Yeah.
There are some that are new from year to year,
Yeah.
but I think it's great. I know when I first came on the board, we didn't see this, and in the last couple of years is whenever the delegate began to bring it to the board. And I think it's great for the administrators, even principals, to take a look at this, because none of this is law
Yeah.
at this point. It's just, what is WASB presenting
Yeah.
to the state legislatures?
Yeah.
And there's no better way, in my opinion, for us board members who are not educators to get the opinion of what's going on than having the administration there. Now, as far as anything tax-related, obviously that's knowledge that board members would have, but any educational things, we're not educators. We don't know. That's why I feel like it was very important for our delegate to be able to say, this is how the Annandale
Yeah.
School District Board wants to vote.
Yeah.
And this is how I'm sitting here to vote.
Yeah.
She may not agree with it, but we
Yeah.
gave her marching orders on
Yeah.
how the board wanted her to vote.
Yeah.
So I think it's great that, in fact, years to come, we should get that out as soon as we
Well, I
can.
was
Right, that's what I-
thinking we
yeah.
can do a better job too of making sure, like, you take a look if you do have input you'd want to share with the board, or if there's.
Something special for you, something
Yeah.
special for Katie,
Yeah.
something special for Clint, or, any of the other administrators too, that they could share with the board. I think that comes 3 months before. Did you get that in
Okay.
October, November, your packet? I know when I was a delegate once, it comes, I think they meet in September. The resolution committee meets in
Thanks.
September. What is it, do you have a date?
November 29th is on there.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, they don't give you a whole lot of time to look at it, which is not really good, but as quick as we get them, we should turn them over to the administrators and the board, so that way they can look at them closer.
Yeah, because then when you guys are discussing it, it might be misunderstandings of
Yep.
the board that, or just even looking at the voucher, like providing
Exactly.
funding, that should be something that we support, knowing that we have a voucher school in our district. They should be giving them more money or providing that instead of just pulling it from us.
Yes.
Because we're already spread thin, and we have to provide certain services that are private schools and specifically to vouchers. So,
Well, and now we're gonna have 2 voucher
Yeah.
schools, so that's.
so, yeah, and that does impact our budget. One thing I will say, John Humphreys, as an aside today, I was talking to him about school psych stuff, but we were talking about, he's the one who presented to you guys about equity and funding, and he's very positive that with the surplus, that they might not even have, that there'll be significant increase. I said, I'll believe it when I see it, John.
I actually feel pretty positive with some
So-
conversations that I've had with some
Okay.
legislatures.
I mean, he
I
was
feel pretty
to the point where they might go dormant.
Per
this-
pupil or special
Both.
ed?
Both.
Both.
Both,
Categorical aid for special ed and
because
levy.
there's such a
like,
huge,
Yeah, so
surplus,
like
yeah.
increasing the, under the levy or whatever.
nobody's telling me numbers.
Yeah. So we'll believe it when we see it. But anyway, as, the last thing I'll say is, is in regulation, there is nothing, if you get calls or if you hear things or whatever about inclusion isn't even a thing. Inclusion is a thing that people throw around, but it is not in the law. Least restrictive environment is what's in the law. And we are gonna meet the needs of each kid, and are we going to try to do our very best to do it in a classroom where they're gonna get the highest quality education? Absolutely. But there is no full inclusion. That would be in violation too, potentially, of special ed law if we weren't meeting the needs of our students with IEPs. So I just wanted to make sure
Well,
people
that's a
were
good
clear about
way
that.
to say it.
So yeah,
Case by case basis.
absolutely should be. And it's not with our virtual partners either, so just so you know, that's another thing we're held to a higher standard than they are. So that's another story, but that's all I got.
All right.
It's a lot.
Anybody have anything else? All right. Our next meeting's Monday, February 13th. We can adjourn.
Oh, yeah.